Yeah. Welcome to A Mutant Manifesto Frozen Rhizome. Probably this is the last Frozen Rhizome episode for now, in the present. I want to recap what I've learned over these past few months during the occupation and resistance and with all my guests. But then basically what I want to focus on as far as this episode is a couple, like, kind of what the conceptual framework for staying with something could be that leads to a sentiment, a feeling, an affect that enables one to continue caring in an actualized way. And for me, I think that a couple concepts, the Derridian Hauntology, and then, Haraway's thick present, a fibrous thick present. Those are two phrases that can open up or open with, coexist with resilient care. In this context, which threatens to become a hard cut, threatens to become elided, threatens invisibility. There's all these statistics. I don't know. To be honest, I'm out on a walk right now, and I just wanted to start recording. But I had all these statistics and quotes lined up on the computer at home. There's like 70,000 people in ICE custody in the U.S., right? And more people have died in ICE custody past year than ever before, or in, like, Trump's administration. But, in addition to, there's 12 people that have died in ICE custody this year, like, since January, so that's, 3 months. And then, like, when people get deported, they, you don't really know where they end up. Like, you can go anywhere. You could be deported to anywhere, basically, and not having much to do with where you're from. And even if you do go back to where you're from, the context might be very different. And then there's all these people that have, there's also, like, whenever somebody dies in ICE custody or is injured, there's, like, a ton of gaslighting and corrupting of information that responds to that, creating this, like, cloud, this, like, mistiness that subdues one's ability to stay with the narrative long enough for it to hit home. And then if you, like, also just the multiplication of it, just the myriads of different stories, that also creates, like, a swarm of things, a swarm of targets, a swarm of potential narratives that kind of results in creating one big cloud rather than something you can stay with, something that has teeth, that has tendrils, that has roots. So, in this flocking, swarming kind of multiplicitous existence. You know, how does one follow a single thread when there's so many others that are constantly coming up, right? You know, and so you could think about the rhizome, you know, with all its different mycelial connections as a potential way to think through and with these clouds and swarms. You could think of, you know, it's something that tunnels and tendrils at the same time. Something that's rooted and expansive at the same time, can transport one and is also situated in a specific context. Yeah. But then there's also, I think, something that's interesting here, which is that the rhizome, you know, like Mercury or Hecate, it allows one transmission between localities. But there are localities within the nexus, or, you know, within it, without it, I mean, you know, adjacent to it, right, that are occluded. Now, some of these, that's not to say that enlightening everything is necessarily the only route. You can think of the undercommons as a defense of things that are occluded, of a defense of occluded knowledges and occluded communities. And I think there's something there. But at the same, you know, it's one of those ambivalent realities. But another way that things are occluded are through, you know, the horrible things that happen to people in ICE custody that we don't know about. And the fact that we don't know what they are, once again, it threatens elision. There's a difference between it being occluded and being elided, being skipped over, being edited out completely. And I feel like there's something to the hauntedness of that black box of what's happened to people that can, you know, stir us up, keep us troubled enough that we might be inspired to act based on that. Right? Because what's the point of, like, thinking everything if you're not, at the end of the day, going to create a subjectivity or foster a subjectivity, you know, or negotiate one in which action is possible. And, you know, I think that you can't just focus on the material realities. You have to also, you know, you also have to sit with the emotional and subconscious, and it's like, you know, unconscious material as well, because it is material. So Derrida in Hauntology is talking about specters of Marx. You know, Marx starts the Communist Manifesto talking about a specter haunting Europe. The specter of communism. Specter, Derrida goes into, like, what the death specter means, you know, all these different words that stand in for spirit and ghost and geist, and how those things have different understandings, different definitions, and different effects, different realities. And then Derrida goes on to say that there's also multiple specters, like the specter haunting Europe, the communism, the Marxism is also multiplicitous. At this point, there are multiple Marxes, and there's multiple interpretations of, understandings of Marxism. And so staying with Marxism is not to stultify it or to fossilize it, but it is to, in a sense, you know, keep it alive and mutating. So, in a similar sense, you know, we could say that we should keep the anti-ice resistance movement mutating and alive, even if it is in a frozen, buried, melted phase. But at the same time, that doesn't mean that we don't have concrete tenets that we can bring to bear as we go forward. There's this giant turkey that's walking by, stomping along. Some of those tenets that we've talked about here include, mutual aid as opposed to charity. What can you do for somebody else? Somebody that's related to you, which most people are, that will reciprocally enable them to act, or just to survive, or to live in a way that benefits the mutuality of it all. And then there is the idea that from instance to instance, there's a breathing between, the resurgence of fungal bodies, fruiting bodies of resistance. For example, in Minneapolis, we got the George Floyd uprising, and then we got this one where militancy exploded in a popular way, in a visible way. But you can always inculcate further action by learning from those events, documenting them, keeping them in your heart, in mind. And I see posters up, I'll be walking along Theodore Wirth or, smoking a cigarette by work, and I'll see a poster that says, somebody was taken here. Those reminders of the uncanniness of something being gone. It's another thing that is keeping those sparks alive, the spores spreading. So we have documentation, we have, this sort of breathing from collective movements, we have mutual aid. A lot of people are stopping doing mutual aid too. All this stuff breathes, and it's unfortunate that it has to, take a break. But it's kind of the reality we live in, the waters we swim in. But I do think that that's why, if you can occupy a sort of if you can get into understanding your reality is haunted, then that can help you maintain more fibrous relation to what you're supposed to be doing with the life that you have. There's also the body work and the care. But the care is a big one. I mean, but I also see continuing, but at the same time, people got to eat, right? And so it's still happening, but the binds of capitalism are bringing people back into just needing to feed themselves and make it into more of a survival thing. I mean, not to say that things like dance and celebration aren't happening, and that can't be collective healing movement, body work in a way, right? And then finally, there's also, I feel like that summarizes kind of a lot of what we've talked about with the different guests and everything. This idea of breathing, so taking breaths in and out, taking breaks, doing cycles of returning to your art and your whatever stimulates you intellectually, spiritually, as the work that enables the more grounded mutual aid and things like that. And then documentation and building historicity and engaging in movement as a body in addition to as a collective. Yes, I'm not sure if the sense of hauntedness as a tool is coming through in what I'm saying right now. But I think that for me, being with there's something I want to talk about called Unheimlich. This German word, Unheimlich, which is it's part of a genealogy of magical realism and surrealism, but it's this concept that I think Freud talks about it and stuff, but essentially the home that is not a home. The home that is no longer just a home. And it's related to the uncanny. And It's the feeling of like when I was on my regular bus route, my bus aid, and like more than half the students were not there. We still had to stop by their houses, but nobody answered. Nobody came at the school I worked at when half of the people that I was working with just weren't there. Their absence, which is a thick presence as well as being absent. But those things, that sense, infecting not just those instances, but also their surroundings, not only in spatially, but also temporally, time and space, being haunted by their absence. And so, if I can sit with that uncanny, haunted, corrupt feeling, it's not just negative. It can also be generative in that I'm inviting the disturbed spirits in an animist sense, in a schizoanalytic, rhizomatic sense, the disturbed spirits to speak with me and commune with me. I'm a disturbed spirit. I'm in fuck. And then that means that it's not exclusively the ICE occupation resistance in Minneapolis. It's also the dead children in Iran. It's also the dead children in Gaza. It's also the assault victims worldwide and personal that you may or may not know. Those disturbed spirits have the potential to speak with you and communicate with you in a productive way if you are able to hold space for the hauntedness of your context and ecology. And from there it becomes a question of alignment. Can your aims and thoughts and feelings and thinking and patterns, habits, customs, rituals, mundane or esoteric, align with the aims of those that have been disturbed, that have been radicalized, in order to mobilize a collective resistance and enable fugitive, celebratory realities. Can we do that? I don't know, is that a thing? Does that make sense? Am I being too... I don't know. Yeah, yeah. May the masses of collective disturbed spirits organize see their oppressives crumble, and slip into better times, unobserved by those who need not. Blessed be, so mote it be. Blessed be, so mote it be. Blessed be, so mote it be. Yo, there's a sick-ass beaver right there. Perhaps it's just a muskrat. Oh, it's a beaver. Oh, it's so cool looking. Some things I forgot to put in to the list of like practical stuff that we've learned from this Frozen Rhizome mini-series would be workplace activism. I don't know if that's really been brought up too much, but workplace militancy, and it's one of the like most fibrous devices for collective action that we have. It's been a little bit disappointing, but still is a thing. And then also I also wanted to bring up protesting, I guess, and other kinds of direct action like that. But I think that the horizon of discussing that kind of thing sets beyond the scope of this podcast. But yeah, still worth bringing up just for the record. I was thinking about editing this in later, but I kind of like it after I did my little spell there. Just to say, these things should continue to... You should be continuing to think about these things and documenting things that you forget and things like that. I think I see what I'm going to take a picture of for the... I'm on a boardwalk. I think I see the thing I'm going to take a picture of for the episode art. So I'm going to do that. Thank you for listening. I appreciate it. I'm really looking forward to starting episode 32, episode 33. Episode 32 is already in the chamber. Excited. It's a return and a step forward at the same time.